All right. Again, thank you all so much for being here. There will be some more that trickle in here, but we want to get started in the interest of time. My name is Mari Prower, and I'm an Associate Dean of Admission here at Colgate. My primary regions are Connecticut, Rhode Island, as well as the Indian subcontinent, which makes a whole lot of sense while I'm planning my travel in typical years. But here we are. It's not about me this time. I'm really going to serve as a moderator for the next sort of 30 minutes or so. We want this to be a very casual conversation so you guys can really know how to interact with our faculty on campus, but we really want to hear the questions that you guys have. So I'm going to pose questions to the two faculty members that are here with us. And then I really encourage you to place any questions that you have in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll also share contact information and future webinar information a little bit later on in the program. So I'm going to have our faculty introduce themselves so you know who they are, what their backgrounds are, and then we'll get into it. So Professor Hagos, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Ingrid Hagos, and I just want to say a few things about myself. I did my undergrad in University of Illinois in cell and structural biology, and then I did my PhD in University of Georgia in development and cell genetics. And then I came to Colgate in 2010. Before that, I was at Emory doing my postdoc in colorectal cancer research. And now I am an associate professor here, and I teach cell biology, molecular biology, and development biology.
Great, thank you. And Professor Bryce, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Bryce. My career is exactly the opposite of Professor Hagos's. I was an undergraduate at Smith College. I did my graduate work in creative writing at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, which is where I was born and raised. I'm a creative writer. In the English department, there are 4 of us writers on the English department faculty. I'm a nonfiction writer. I've written 2 books. One is a work of literary journalism that grew out of my first career as a journalist. And the second is a memoir called Unlearning to Fly, about flying in Alaska. I teach at Colgate courses in creative writing. I teach in the core program, and I also teach a very large lecture course called Living Writers that I can say more about later on in the webinar, but it's a huge amount of fun, and I'm delighted to be here today.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. This is an invaluable conversation that we're going to be having, and your guys' background is just exactly what you said, very different and very interesting, and really what makes Colgate Colgate in that sense. So I want to just first start off by asking you to both talk a little bit about what it's like to be a professor in a typical Colgate classroom. Professor Bryce, would you like to start?
Sure. I think that I would say there is no typical Colgate classroom. It's a really good question. I've had classes with as few as 12 students in them, occasionally classes that were all women, just because it's a creative writing tends to skew female, though that's pretty unusual. Core classes with 18 students who are majoring in all sorts of disciplines around the university, and to whom I need to make a case for why they should be there. And I almost always manage to convince them by the end of the semester. And then again, this quite large lecture class of 50 students that gets to meet the authors of the books they're reading once a week. Also, like Professor Hagos, I work one-on-one with honors students, at least 2 or 3 a semester, and then a couple of research students over the summer.
Great. What about you, Professor Hagos?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that's great. I mean, I think Professor Bryce said it all, but yeah, we have in the biology also, we have a big class. Our introductory class is team taught with 3 professors. So we have ranging from 70 students to about 80 students per semester. And then we have individual labs, which have 16 students. That's where we know our students much. And then most of the classes I teach, upper level courses, have pretty much maybe, I don't know, 16 to 20 students. So because of that, we really know our students by their names, their hobbies, and we treat our students as people. I think that's very important at Colgate in terms of that. We involve a lot of active learning in class, participations in class. So the shy students, they don't have to really be shy, and then they can actually open up and talk. Sometimes in the sciences, we have, kind of putting poster presentations, oral presentations together. So students, they know each other together. So kind of a family, you know what I mean? There is a relationship between professors and students, but I think we treat our students as a family. We grow up together for at least a semester, and there is a continuous relationship going forward. And often in the biology and others, I think in my class, at least, I put students together, the whole as a group, and they create a video clip to teach them teamwork. So they're gonna choose a big topic which is not discussed very well in class, and then they put it together as a music, and then they presented it, and it's a lot of fun.
That's a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is just how Colgate students and faculty sort of interact both in and out of the classroom. Because you talked a little bit about how you do it a little bit in and out of the classroom, but do you want to talk a little bit more about how that happens?
Sure, I can start us off if you like. Every summer I have at least 2 and sometimes as many as 5 students who are called creative writing fellows. They're typically creative writing majors or minors at Colgate this semester. I think one of them is a neuroscience and creative writing double major, and the other one is actually double majoring in peace and conflict studies and history, but turns out to be a pretty serious writer. And they do research for me for this large lecture course, Living Writers, which is a little bit like reinventing the wheel. Every summer we invite 10 writers to come to campus. In the fall, the students read 10 books by those writers. And because you may be able to grasp this instantly, but because the course is different in every iteration, every time I teach it, it's not like I'm teaching, 19th century literature every year. I'm teaching a completely new course every year. The students do a lot of the heavy lifting research wise for me. They look up reviews and interviews with the authors, and they help me prepare to teach these books. And that's a really intimate experience. We meet several times a week. We exchange hundreds of emails. We get coffee together. I find out what's going on in their lives. Maybe I'll stop there, but it's a pretty wonderful relationship. Oh, the other thing those students do is they work as interns for the Colgate Writers Conference, a week-long on-campus writers conference for about 100 people that's held the 3rd week in June every year, and that I also direct. So the students get some sort of hands-on arts administration experience, and then also some research experience.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much similar. It's just a different setup. We do involve a lot of students in our laboratories during summer, during regular semesters, spring and fall. So it's a lot of collaborative work is happening with our students. So they work in a laboratory setup, but also we have meetings, lab meetings, maybe once a week or once a month, depending what we need. And then students, they present their work, they got constructive feedbacks, and then students critique each other, not only just from the professor side. And then eventually, again, like I said, they present their work during the summer. For instance, we have poster presentations, and then they show that during the semester also, students, we have a student presentation at the end of the semester, and they do that. So through this, they really are really hand-on to do a lot of things in relation to research.
Great. Thank you both so much. Hearing about this always makes me want to go back to be a student, to be able to see these kinds of opportunities again. Professor Hagos, can you talk a little bit about how students can pursue research at Colgate and sort of various research opportunities that may be available?
Yeah, so I think at Colgate, we really encourage our students to involve in research. I think I would say almost all faculties at Colgate has some sort of research going on, whether it's in humanities or social studies or even in the sciences. So I think students they can kind of involvement during summer. So we have summer internship. Often, for instance, I can speak in biology, almost more than half of the faculties are stayed here at Colgate to involve students in research. Often they take 2 to 4 students. For instance, myself, I had 4 students this summer. They did a research for 8 weeks. And then during the regular semesters, students are also, they are willing to, some of the summer students willing to continue research during the regular semester. So then we involve them. Others are new. They're gonna come and join the lab. So research is a big thing. We encourage really our students to do research, and then throughout their time at Colgate, if they can. If they don't, then I think they should do at least a semester research so that they can get something out of it. Because I think everything we do is better when you have hand-on, and then when you do it really in person.
Anything you want to add, Professor Bryce?
I feel, Mari, like I wasn't listening as carefully as I ought to have been to your earlier question. I feel like I answered the research question, and I was less good at thinking about the opportunities for students in the arts and humanities to do things outside of the classroom during the school year. So I just very briefly would add that there are, as there are over in the sciences and the social sciences, an abundance of opportunities for meeting with your professors outside the classroom and getting to know them better. The natural sciences and the social sciences and the arts and humanities all have weekly brown bags or colloquia where faculty and students come together for a lecture, a talk, of an event of some kind. There, over in again, I'm back to the English department and creative writing, but our students do meetings and out in the community at local bars and at local bakeries. There's a weekly write-in on Wednesday afternoons hosted by one of my colleagues, where everybody who's working on a piece of writing just comes together and works together in the same room, and may talk about that work with each other at the end. But that's a really lovely moment when students come together with faculty and also recent alumni and even some community members. There are lots of opportunities in the English department for meeting with guest scholars, guest writers, having, joining us for dinner at the home of a faculty member after a reading, or going out to a restaurant with us. So it's lots of it. It's one of the advantages of a place as small as Colgate. There are just, as Professor Hagos said, our students are like our family. The boundaries between our home life and our teaching life can be fairly porous sometimes, perhaps a little too porous sometimes when things get rowdy in the village at the weekend, but mostly in a really, really wonderful, healthy way that's good for us and good for the students, I think.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it right back to you, Professor Bryce. If you can just talk about how students can pursue different off-campus study experiences, that'd be great.
Yeah, there are heaps of them, and I you may be more up than I am on all the options. I think students can take their financial aid abroad for either 2 semester-long study groups, or a study group and an extended study experience. Do either of you have a sense of roughly how many Colgate study groups there are now?
Yeah, so we typically run about 20 to 22 per year. And the study groups are a way for students to be able to continue to engage with professors and current students while being in another location typically there's some form of co-curricular experience involved in that.
They're really wonderful. I've led the London study group 5 or 6 times, and in Colgate's study group model is a little different from what's offered at a lot of other universities, in that a group of students accompanies a professor to a foreign location, and we have study groups all over the world. And in that location usually takes 1 or 2 courses with the Colgate professor, and then the rest of their courses at a local university or from local faculty. And yes, as you say, Mari, there are usually co-curricular opportunities. My study group to England does a mountains, moors, and sea segment. I teach travel writing as one of my courses, and rather than go to the tourist sites like Stonehenge and the Tower of London and Dover Cliffs, which I have done in other years, we go to sort of wild places in England, and the students both go and see these places and experience them and enjoy them, but they also write about them. And then I'll just put a quick plug in for another study group that I'm taking in the spring of 23. I was meant to go in the spring of 22, but everything was canceled in the spring of 22, of course, and that's an extended study to Mount Everest Base Camp. And I'm going along with a professor from Syracuse University, Professor Hagos. We should talk about this sometime. He studies human adaptation to high altitude. So he's a biologist and anthropologist, biological anthropologist. And then I'm taking a group of students who will be thinking about writing about the natural world, writing about the environment, writing about pollution and overcrowding and tourism and issues like that
That's very interesting.
Base Camp. But we'll trek from Lukla to Mount Everest Base Camp and back.
That is amazing. That's really cool.
I'm really excited. I've been doing a lot of stadium steps to prepare.
That is really cool.
One of the benefits of not having sports is the stadium's open for you. So there we go. So if you can both, we have some really great questions that are coming in, but I want to just sort of end with talking about how sort of an off-campus study experience or a research experience can really transition to sort of helping students after they graduate from Colgate. Professor Hagos, do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I believe our, Colgate is really an ideal place to prepare our students to go to the natural environment. We, as I said before, and Professor Price said, we are a family here, but the outside world is not as friendly and as a family, so it's a different world. But I think a lot of our students, whether they're going to go to work in pharmaceutical companies, or they want to go to medical school or nursing school, or maybe they want to become a scientist, research is really involved in here. We prepare them really good. We have a lot of research going on each semester. We have a lot of research during summertime. Often students publish paper with us. I can give you my own example. Actually, from 2015 to now, I publish papers, and then about 30 students are actually co-authors in these peer review scientific papers. Our students are often, we took them to international and national meetings to present their work. That is really outstanding. They are also excellent students. The way they describe, the way they are a very serious students. So then I think having all this together, if you look at it, whether you're going to end up to grad school or medical school or any health related kind of field, I think research is key. You have to do research. And then also plus that, if you have publications, that will be also an awesome, because it's really good. So between Colgate, and then now we have 2 important programs outside Colgate. One is Singapore, which is a research. We take students to Singapore for a semester and including summer. And then we also, Colgate is the only institution in the US, actually it has abroad, like off-campus study at the NIH for a semester. So not only they're gonna do during just full time, which is a semester, but they start research like, during the summer, so 6 months of having research at the NIH is an outstanding. Often they end up having papers, and then often the students they go back and work for a couple of years or a year before they end up going to grad school and medical school. So I believe Colgate is preparing our students for anything they want after Colgate.
Now, I have really very little to add to that. I think Professor Hagos said it really well. In my very particular narrow discipline of creative writing, students often are able to find, I shouldn't say often, occasionally students are able to find a publisher for the poems or the novel that they wrote as their senior honors project. More often they're able to parlay that work into admission to a really good graduate program in creative writing or English. But you know, students in the arts and humanities at Colgate go into all sorts of fields: law, teaching, and administration. They go to medical school. The last time I went to London, I took a student who majored in biology and creative writing, and who had already been admitted to medical school at the University of Rochester. So he came along on a creative writing study group to London.
That's great. So in the last sort of like 7-ish minutes before we close, there's some great questions that have come through, and I encourage you, if we don't get to them, to reach out to us, and we can certainly, I'll provide my contact information and I can help answer those as well. But there's a question about first-year students getting involved in research on campus. Is that something that first-year students can do?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah, they can do it. I mean, you know, we are very busy, and, you know, demands are a lot. We don't accommodate everybody, but, you know, there is a lot of opportunities. I think students often, before they come to Colgate, they contact us, and then we find a way. Not every time it's going to work, but we find a way. If they don't have the idea of, I don't have research experience, and can I do research? I think they should not think that way. You don't need research experience to work in a research setup, you know. So some students, they already have experience in high school. I remember I had a student, you know, he was working, in research in Stony Brook, and then he said he wanted to meet with me, and then this is 5 years ago, and then he said, I got accepted at Cornell University, and then I accepted to Colgate. So I really like your research. So if you take me, I will come to Colgate. And I told him, absolutely. And this guy is outstanding. He ended up publishing 7 papers from Singapore, NIH, and then from my two papers from in my lab. And now he ended up he's in grad school in Caltech, you know what I mean? So there are students, they don't have any research experience, and they come and then they want to join. And then we said, fine, you know, they shadow maybe for a semester and so on, and then they got their own project. So we don't promise like 100%, you know, everybody gonna get in, but eventually, if that's what your interest is, you might not get in the fall, but you will get in the spring. So as long as you have that interest.
Great. And then there's some great questions about sort of you guys reflecting on students being treated as people, which I think is great. And it's exactly what it is here. But someone wants to know what academic support systems are available for students sort of outside of the normal classroom setting and research. I think I can start off by answering that generally, in the sense that we have tutors that are available in a lot of different disciplines. Professors hold office hours, and professors are just as much people as the students are. And I think that's sort of what they were communicating, that sense that, you know, you may see them walking their dogs or going for a bike ride or running the steps at Handicare Stadium, and they're just as much people. And I think that's sort of tough for some students to imagine, but you know, everybody's really intentional about being at a place like Colgate. Everybody chooses to be at a place like Colgate because of what sort of our ethos and our philosophy is. And so just as much as you are a person, so are faculty, staff, administrators, everybody else in between. So I think that's my 2 cents of that, if there's anything else you guys wanted.
Well, there's also the Center for Learning, Teaching, and Research, which provides resources to us faculty to help us with our teaching, but it also helps connect students to tutors if they need tutors, helps connect them with disability services if there are students who, for instance, need extra time on assignments. There's a whole department that works with students there. But I think you put it really well, Mari. I mean, Professor Hagos went to a research institution. I spent a year at Harvard as an undergraduate, and at those kinds of places, most of your interactions are with teaching assistants or teaching fellows, and here students interact with us. You know, really, just to be really honest with you all, you have to sort of screw up your courage and come to our office hours, or catch us after class, or send us an email and ask us to have coffee with you. And I was about to say 9 out of 10 of us will say yes, but really, I think 49 out of 50 of us will say absolutely yes, would love to get to know you better outside the class, would love to know if you have some issues of access, some difficulty with some assignments or some classes. We will help you find the resources that you need. Absolutely. But you may have to be just that much, a little bit braver, it seems to me. Maybe it's just a smidge harder to come straight to us. Here I am, a gray-haired professor, than it would be to go to a grad student in his or her 20s who's teaching your class. But just do it. We are all teaching at a liberal arts college because that's what we want to do.
I think that sort of answers this next question, which is the resources that the school and professors provide. And I think a lot of it, from my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of it happens through natural conversations, or students approaching you saying, I'm interested in the research that you're doing, or I'm interested in the NIH, or I'm interested in the living writers. Professors want to know that. It's a 50-50 relationship here. If they don't know that you're interested in doing their research, they will not seek you out for that. So, you know, if there's one final piece of advice you could give to the students that are here, what would you say about sort of approaching research and off-campus study opportunities and approaching professors?
Well, I think students should not be shy. We were like them. We were students, you know, at some point. I think the idea of that distancing, you know, professor versus students, you know, at Colgate, I think mainly it's not, I mean, you know, the reason we said as peoples are, our relationship does not stop in the classroom. I think it's a continuous, you know, we see each other in downtown Hamilton, you know, small, you just say hello, you go have a tea. If you don't like to come to office hours, we can meet outside, but you need to do that initiation. So I think, you know, reaching out is important. You have to reach out. Otherwise, I don't know what you want, right? So reaching out in terms of office hours, come. If there are concepts or ideas or something are not clear, we can clear them out during office hours. If you are interested to do in research, reach out. You have to email. Don't be shy to email. Be respectful, but reach out and then you can communicate. So I think my advice is make sure you reach out, and then there is always something you can get from it.
I think that's exactly right. It's exactly what I would say. For if I could only give one piece of advice, the only thing I might add is, you know, learn stuff for yourself. Be curious. Of course, you'll come to college and you'll rely on upperclassmen, that's a sexist term, of course, and on other students for your information about what classes to take and what professors to avoid. You know what? Find your own way. Don't take anyone else's word for that. So a professor who didn't click with another student might be exactly the person who you need in your life. So, you know, do as Professor Hagos said, and you know, reach out, go to office hours, send an email, ask if we can meet you for coffee, even if you're not our student, and see for yourself what's best for you.
Well, I want to immensely thank Professor Hagos and Professor Bice for joining us this afternoon. I actually know that I learned a lot, and I feel like sometimes it's hard to do that, but it's always so wonderful being graced with the presence of our faculty and just being able to really interact with them and hear everything from them. So thank you all so much for being here this evening. If you have any additional questions, I put my contact information in the chat, and you can find all of our contact information on our website. I also put additional webinars upcoming and those that we've already done in the past, the link to that on our website. So if there's anything else we can do to help with your college search process, please let us know. And thank you all so much for being here this evening.